This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Love Letters Live with Janet Gallin. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you, dear. I'm going to introduce Nic now?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Nic, hi, I'm so glad to see you.
Hey, great to see you.
You know, you're such a nice man. This has been taken so long that I was so touched that you remembered that I wanted to get you for Love Letters Live. And David Zimmerman tells me that award ceremony I met you at was 5 years ago.
Yeah, you know, I guess time flies when we have good people around us and good intentions.
I mean, it flies anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you to our viewers. I want to introduce Nic Novicki, who is an actor that many of you probably know from his work. And many of you may like to know some of the other things he's doing. So can I just start right in asking you a question?
Sure.
And that is, and I'm always curious when people have an exceptional talent, as you do, when did you first realize that in life?
Well, for those that are...
What drove you to acting?
Yeah. For those of you that can't see me, because some of you may just be listening, I'm a little person. So I'm 3'10", and really early in my life, I started to learn how to use comedy to be an icebreaker and to kind of get people comfortable and familiar with me and myself as being a little person. And especially growing up.
Was that difficult?
You know, it never was. I've always been a little person, and I've always been kind of an extrovert.
So, oh, yeah, you're such a charmer that it's, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, that's, you know, I guess that's very nice of you to say that I am a charmer, but I think it, you know, it was sort of a comedy and performing became a sort of a mechanism to break the ice, to win people over, to get myself out of situations.
Was that like in early grammar school?
Yeah, in early grammar school. So I learned that rather than kind of be the joke, I could be involved and, you know, be a comedian. And I was good at accents. And if people had something to say about me, I would, you know, be able to be funny as well. And then people were like, whoa, wait a minute. So I think part of my background of being a performer just came from a mechanism of, I wouldn't say survival, but just kind of, it was just something that I was good at. You know, it was a talent and something that I enjoyed. You know, I was always the one that liked to kind of speak out and to do the accent or the impression of a teacher or classmate. And
lucky for the world. Did you get in trouble for that?
You know, it's funny. I did. I think in early on, it was like, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And then it ended up being like, well, he's doing his career.
Well, but also people like teachers don't like being mimicked as a rule, I would guess. So what was your family?
Well, I never did. What? Yeah. Well, you know, to clarify that, I never did. My kind of sense of humor is never really about punching down. I'm more about kind of, I'm a storyteller, and I kind of pride myself on finding the right time to do my bits. So teachers actually were the ones that encouraged me to look at theater.
Ask you about that. So starting with your parents, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 2 brothers.
And are you the youngest, middle, oldest, what?
Yeah, I'm the youngest. So definitely, you know, I love my brothers, Alex and Ted. And, you know, my family was so supportive.
Your what?
I said my family was very supportive of me my whole life. And
so that's what I was curious about, because I think, you know, all talents have to be shined up at home or somehow encouraged. And so your parents saw this early on?
Yeah. You know, what's funny is, I started doing speaking, and I started fundraising for Little People of America when I was, I believe, 11. I could have been 8 the first time I did my first.
So that's really interesting. So you're like an old hand at this before you get your acting jobs.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I basically, I say I've been doing stand-up comedy since I was a kid. Yeah. Because I would give speeches, and I would always open up with like talking about how the podium was too high. Who planned this over here? What, you know, what's going on? So I learned really early on as a public speaker that if I could break the ice, then they would listen. And
Yeah.
I think that was the same kind of tools that I learned just being a kid growing up on the playground.
So I'm listening to you and thinking, like, giving permission to laugh is also a
Ye-
huge gift for your audience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think it's a huge gift for anybody.
Yeah,
If
that's
you
true.
take yourself too seriously,
Right.
um,
So how
it's
did this all transfer to your first acting job? And what was it? Remember?
yeah. Well, as a kid, my dream was to be a professional athlete. I wanted to be a football player and a basketball player. And then once I hit puberty, I haven't grown really since I was, in elementary school. I pretty much have been about the same height, and
Uh-huh.
everybody shot up so high. And so it became evident that I wasn't going to be able to really even play sports anymore once I hit junior high.
Right.
So that's when I had an amazing teacher that, said, you're so good at these impressions and kind of being funny
Okay.
in the class, you need to sign up for our school play. So I started doing plays in our school and then community theater. So those would be really my first acting experiences. But even in elementary school, I was writing my own skits and performing them
So
for my
did that,
school.
how did that shift to your first professional acting job? And what was that?
I was on Saturday Night Live. I got, I had a small part in a recurring character actually on Saturday Night Live, but I had already been doing stand-up comedy.
Uh-huh.
So I went to school for business. So
Really?
even though I was into acting in high school and that was my new passion, I ended up taking kind of a hard left, and I decided to go to school for business, and I got a academic scholarship going to
But
school
with
for
an eye
marketing and
towards what,
entrepreneurship.
if you had to use it? Like, what are your
What was
business
that?
skills? With a degree in business, studying business, what would that have led to if you had not followed acting and you see yourself in business?
Well, actually, I still kind of see myself in business. In many senses, I am my own business. And what I
True.
studied, yeah, and what I studied in school was marketing and entrepreneurship. Those were my majors.
Uh-huh.
And, I've always been an entrepreneurial mindset as an artist. Let me create my own work. Let me, start a company. Let me create a web series, produce this movie. And then ultimately now I created and run the Easterseals Disability Film
Oh,
Challenge.
yes. All right. So I wanted to ask you about that. But first, can I ask you, did you have a preference between movies and television? I know you've done a lot of both. What was your favorite movie role?
My favorite movie role, I got to say, I've been honored to produce a lot of my own projects.
Uh-huh.
Some of those have been short films where I've been able to be the love interest, the gangster,
Uh-huh.
a romantic lead.
Mm-hmm.
And those have been kind of unique, and it's been fun to be able to direct and write and produce and star in stuff that I do myself. But I've also been honored to be in a lot of kind of kids movies and working for Disney and Netflix. And, really though, I would say my favorite projects overall in terms of film and TV, I got to work with Martin Scorsese on Boardwalk Empire.
Uh-huh.
And,
Now, the first time I contacted you, you were in Canada filming something. Was that?
Yes. So I was filming The Good Doctor, which
Uh-huh.
was also just such an amazing experience. So I was filming that in Vancouver, and believe it or not, I filmed 7 different things in Vancouver. So I've been up there a lot.
Nice. So it doesn't seem, listening to you, that you had to go through the discomfort of ever having been uncomfortable.
Well,
I mean,
I think that would be a lie to say. I think everybody goes through different periods where they're uncomfortable. I just like every actor, I've had periods where I've struggled, and I've had to come up with different ideas to further my career. And I think as any person, whether you're little, tall, you got a disability or not, you also have times where you're uncomfortable because that's life. And I wouldn't be a true.
I was thinking more of, those teenage years that can be so devastating, but apparently you always attracted people and had friends, and I can see why.
I got to be honest, there was a period where when I was in junior high, that was tougher for me. That was a period. I've had a lot of surgeries. So I've had complete reconstructive surgery on my hips, ankles, knees.
Oh, and that's having to do with being a little person?
Yeah, so I have pseudoachondroplasia dwarfism, which is a rare form of dwarfism. And I, as a kid, wasn't able to stand for longer than like 10 seconds. And so I had to have complete reconstructive surgery. And that required, a couple months in the hospital and then body cast for like 4 months and then
Well, that
learn
is
how to walk
difficult.
again.
So I was
And
unaware of this
yeah.
until talking to Mary Lou Nacarado, which I'm sure you know her.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. And she talked about the physical things that happen with dwarfism. And I was, of course, to say I was unaware of that is like tip of the iceberg, how much I've been unaware of in life. But
well, what's interesting about that is there's over 200 forms of dwarfism.
So I heard.
So, when I talk about my experience, they could be very different from another little person that's listening. So I can't speak unilaterally for all little people, but yes, some of us do have to have surgeries. But I got to say that the process of having surgery ended up making me a much stronger and resilient person. Because, I had my first surgeries when I was a kid. It didn't faze me. Then I went through a tough period in junior high.
How old were you when you had your first surgeries?
So my first surgeries I had when I was 11.
Okay.
And so that process, I was just a kid and it was easy to deal with. And as, it was just something I did. And, but in between my first set of surgeries when I was 11 and the second set when I was 16 was junior high. And that was a period where it's hard. It's hard to be going through puberty. It's awkward for everybody, but when you're a little person, it was extra awkward.
Okay, let me ask you something. Well, let's talk about, extra awkward, sure. Let's talk about the Easterseals Film Challenge. And so I wanted to give people a chance to know that part of you and what you do, because I think, I'm guessing that everyone in the film industry knows about it. And I'm guessing that everybody in the disability community knows about it, but I think people in general might not know about it. So will you talk about that? And I see now that since you've been doing this since you're 11, it was no big stretch for you to found this. Will you just say what it is?
Sure. So the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge is a weekend film competition where over the course of a weekend, participants write, shoot, edit, and create 3 to 5 minute films that have somebody with a disability in front of or behind the camera. And the whole reasoning behind this is, as I said earlier, I've been creating my own work and work leads to work. So the fact that I've been in over 40 TV shows and movies, the majority of these opportunities of working with the Farley brothers, Martin Scorsese, network TV shows, has come from me creating my own content. So with the film challenge, I wanted to empower other people with disabilities to create work for themselves, both in front of and behind the camera.
And what about families of people with disabilities? Are they have the same opportunity?
Absolutely. So each film needs to have one person.
Anybody can take up this challenge.
Sure. So the challenge is open to people from all over the world, and each film has to have one person with a disability in front of or behind the camera.
Right.
And now the interesting thing about this is this film challenge is all about collaboration, because work leads to work and there's allies that are along the way. But ultimately, through my career, I've gotten hired by one person who leads to the next job, who leads to the next job. I was on The Sopranos, and that led to Boardwalk Empire. I was on Private Practice, and then now I'm on The Good Doctor. And they don't always correlate, but the fact is, when you're on set, you're building your community. And in terms of you asking the question about families, that's a really interesting question you asked, because the film challenge, what's really unique about this are the variety that happens within the films. So we have Oscar and Emmy winners that take part in the film challenge now.
Now
both
you're
in
saying
front
Oscar and Emmy winners who are not themselves disabled, but what?
So we have Oscar and Emmy winners, including Marcia Gay Harden, who won an Oscar for acting in Mystic River, and she has acted in a film. We've had Emmy winners direct films, and so in all different roles. So it's all about the inclusion of it. So you just need one person with a disability in front of or behind the camera. But with that being said, so the spectrum is, we do have Oscar and Emmy winners that take part in the challenge, but then we also have families that take part every year. Now they love it. They have a son with Down syndrome, or their nephew is in a wheelchair, or their daughter is a little person. And they do this as a family exercise that they just do with minimal resources. And we've seen some films go on to be finalists and even award winners that were done with iPhones or, DSLR cameras.
I wanted to ask you something about, because now, of course, I think we're all aware of the fact that life has changed because of the pandemic and isolation and not being able to. So this business of this challenge must be going on as strong as ever if people can do this from the privacy of their own homes. I mean, these people who want to make these films they're not stumped, are they? They're not.
So it's really interesting that you brought that up, because, we're actually sponsored by all the major networks and studios, CBS Entertainment, Diversity and Inclusion, Viacom, CBS, NBC Universal, Sony Pictures, HBO, a lot of big networks, Sony Pictures Entertainment. But ultimately, and we even have a contract so that SAG-AFTRA performers can take part in the film challenge without being paid upfront fees.
Oh, okay, so the union has to support that.
Yeah, so the union has been a supporter since, because I started the Disability Film Challenge in 2013. I partnered with Easterseals Southern California in 2017. Now, some of you guys may not know who Easterseals is. Easterseals is the nation's largest disability services organization. They've been around.
What do they do? Because I don't know. I've heard of it all my life. Easterseals, you buy them. You buy those Easterseals.
Yes.
Ever since I was a child, and this is like in the 40s.
Yeah.
Right.
So they provide disability services.
What is that?
So that's a variety of different services for children, for adults. Some of those, they do autism therapy. They do job placement. They do veteran opportunities. Okay. So there's actually 65 different affiliates of Easterseals around the nation, and each of these affiliates do different services, but they're all related. And for 100 years, they've been providing these life-changing services for people with disabilities and their families.
Thank you for saying all this, because I have a feeling this is going to be news to a lot of people.
Well, that's great. And, anywhere you are, there is a great Easterseals affiliate. I know that, the Cleveland, for those individuals in Ohio, I know that the Easterseals was actually started in Ohio. So 100 years ago, that's where Easterseals began.
Okay.
So, and I know I've been to Cincinnati, and I've done, keynoted and also been the MC for some of their amazing kind of events. And there's just great services. So anywhere you are listening, I really advise you to see if you can get involved. Sometimes they have 5K walks. Sometimes if you're somebody that needs support, I would really advise you to go to Easterseals website and look in and type in for your region and contact them. They may be able to provide services.
This is just information is a bag of gold.
Yeah.
I have something on on a related topic that I've always been curious about. And, it's probably just indicates what a dunderhead I am. But what qualifies a person as a person with a disability? And the reason I ask this is because I know several people who have disabilities, and I don't see how they're disabled at all. They've got fabulous careers, they've got families, they've got children, they've got friends. What qualifies a person to be disabled, and how far do we have to look to see that somebody who's has a disability doesn't seem to be disabled? There, there's the Shriners Children Hospital has a wonderful ad, and I'm sure you're familiar with them.
Yes.
And they ran on TV for a while. It was just wonderful. And it had a variety of kids before the camera, and one maybe had just one leg or an artificial leg, and whatever their disability was. And camera would pan in on them and refer to them as disabled, and each child would say, "Disabled? Not me."
Yeah.
And then,
Well, here's something, and again, there's 61 million Americans with some form of disability. The Center for Disease Control did a survey that found that 1 in 4 Americans have some form of disability. And to the first part of your
you're
question,
talking about
what
physical.
or cognitive? So
Okay, that's good, yeah.
so that could be all kinds of invisible disabilities, emotional, mental health, autism,
I
Down
wanted to
syndrome.
add those in because they're
Absolutely.
emotional we consider like severe mental illness, but
Sure.
also emotional that we don't count.
Yeah, well, we do. Here's the thing, that the Americans with Disabilities Act, that we just celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I had the privilege of speaking with Bob Dole way back 19 years ago when I was a young lad. And I introduced the Secretary of Labor, Elaine Chao. And so I've been involved with the Americans with Disabilities Act, but also I've been impacted by the Disabilities Act since it began. Those provided amazing legislation for me as in terms of having the school that I went to be fully accessible for me.
Ah, okay,
There's all these different disabilities. So when we talk
sure.
about disability, it's not just somebody in a wheelchair. There's all kinds of different disabilities.
Well, that's
And
kind of
those
what I
are
was
all
getting at. Yeah.
encompassed by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I would say to the second part of your question, really, I think there's so much pride in disability right now.
Uh-huh.
So there's a really smart guy named Lawrence Carter Long. Now, Lawrence Carter Long, he is a gentleman with cerebral palsy, and he's a disability activist. And he was on NPR, and he had a whole campaign that said, say the word, disability. It's not a bad word. We should say it. And so even when I came up with the Disability Film Challenge, even before partnering with Easterseals, it was important for me to have this be Disability Film Challenge. Now,
Okay,
this
so
is something I'm proud of, to
yeah,
be
so
a
you're
person with
drawing
a
a really
disability.
nice distinction and helpful for me
Yeah.
with my question in a way as to having a disability and saying that out loud doesn't have to do with what you're able to accomplish. It's a separate thing.
Well, I don't think see, I think, to be honest, that you're seeing it as that the word disability is a bad thing. I'm
No,
seeing it
no,
as
I'm
it's a
not.
good thing. No,
I'm,
but I'm just saying,
oh,
and that's okay. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying in general, this is not just to you. I'm saying people in general. Sometimes when they hear the word disability, there's been a lot of, stigmatization around it as being bad. But now we're saying, hey, let's take back this word. This is a good word, and that having a disability doesn't define who you are as an
okay,
actor or
that's
parent or
that's
father.
that's what I'm getting at, and I think yes,
Absolutely.
I'm seeing that people do feel that when they see disability, like what
Yeah.
can So another question is with this Easterseals Film Channel challenge. Is your goal anyway connected with getting more people with disabilities roles in mainstream? I mean, I always wondered, being an old woman now and having seen movies and TV all my life and having known people with disabilities, you never saw a little person as a surgeon, or I mean, you did
Yeah.
see what's his name, Raymond Burr, in a wheelchair for some reason, and as an attorney. But in general, you don't see,
Yeah.
and
So
there's no reason a little person shouldn't be a leading man or a surgeon or whatever it is. You want more of that, I'm guessing.
absolutely. So the whole goal of the film challenge, the mission of the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge, is to create more opportunities for people with disabilities in front of and behind the camera, and to in turn change the way the world sees disability.
And you're getting some places because I know John Pazis with Performing Arts Studio West
Absolutely.
is finding, oh, God bless that man, he's finding jobs for people. Yes.
We have
How
been
are we doing in this area?
I'm feeling so honored. If you go to disabilityfilmchallenge.com
I'm going
and
to do that.
you click the challenge tab and hit the
Uh-huh.
success stories, you'll see some of the jobs that have come up. But
Okay.
every week we're being contacted by studios, by networks. See, a lot of people are aware of the problem of the lack of inclusion of people with disabilities in front of and
Sure.
behind the camera. the film challenge is a solution to that problem, because
Yes,
you
I can
can't
see
just
that.
talk about the problem. You have to create a film. And when you create your own project, you're creating your own job opportunity, and you're creating something to be seen in. So all the time, network studios, producers, directors are saying, hey, I'd like to see this guy from this film, or this girl from that film, or do you have any? Yeah.
Well, also, I'm guessing that people want to see people that represent themselves.
That's really what it's about, you
I mean,
know.
you say 1 in 4 Americans are disabled. That is to say, they're officially given that title as disabled.
Well, you can claim it. You don't. This
No,
is one of these titles that
when
you
you
can.
say, when you say 1 out of 4, somebody's
Yes,
counting and
yes.
tracking.
You know, that this is part of the issue, and what we're up against, I think, in the disability community.
What's
is
that?
right now there's a lot of people with disabilities that have a hard time self-identifying. They have a hard time saying, hey, I have a disability, and I'm a great lawyer, and I'm a great doctor, and I'm a great actor. You know, it's okay. And I think that now, as a society, people are looking for us. They're looking to fully integrate us into society. And I would say, in a big way, the film and television industry. So if you're listening and you're an actor, or you're a writer, or you're a person with a disability that works behind the camera, please self-identify yourself as somebody with a disability.
How wonderful that you're offering that. But I just noticed that you did something that is so crucial to communicating. And you said, people with a disability and a great lawyer, or people with a disability and a great, you never use the word but. And this is a big problem in how people communicate. You know, they'll say, well, he's disabled, but he's a really good, no but about it.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm so glad that you kind of made that point. It's the and word.
Yeah.
That is helpful and more accurate.
Yeah, because I think for me, you know, I'm a little person, my wife's a little person, but that doesn't define.
How did you meet? How did you meet?
Oh, we met actually through a
I'm
mutual
always
friend.
like, basically, I'm just your basic busybody. So I always like to think about the story. Go ahead.
So we met a little over 10 years ago. And it was actually fate, because was leaving. She was leaving as I was just showed up. And my friend was talking to her, and she said, oh, I'm leaving. And she said she was looking for advice about acting at the time. Now she works in development, but at the time she was looking for advice about acting. And so my friend happened to say, oh, this is my best friend coming over here, Nic Novicki. He's an actor. Why don't you talk to him, as she was leaving? And then, you know, we started to just kind of talk as friends. And then, you know, now we've been married 5 years in 2 weeks. But if I had showed up 5 minutes later, we wouldn't have met each other.
There you go. Yeah. So you've got fate to thank. I want to thank you for doing this. I have learned
I want to thank you
so much today.
And, you know, if I can, you know, I was talking before about this year and how this has been a very challenging year for many people. You know, we had to delay this year's Easterseals Disability Film Challenge because of the coronavirus. Yeah. But then we relaunched, and we had a home edition of documentary films. And we had the most films ever created. And we have 87 amazing films. So if you go to disabilityfilmchallenge.com, I really hope you check out all these amazing films.
I'm going to let people know more about this too. But also I can see where during this isolation time, families are looking for ways to do things together. And what a wonderful project for a family to make movies together.
Oh, absolutely. And even beyond that, because as I said, we're already past this year's cycle of the film challenge. But if you're listening and you want to get involved, next year we will have a film challenge. But what you could be doing right now is watching these amazing films. They're all available on our website.
I have one last question to ask you, because I wish we could just stay here for hours. I have so much to learn. But as I am basically about love letters, let me just ask you, which I always like to do. If you were to write a love letter right now, who would you be writing to? I mean, I've listened to you for several minutes, and there's so many people in your life that I'm tempted to write them a letter.
I would have to write that letter to my wife. You know, I love her, you know, and she's just there for me every step of the way with the film challenge.
I hope you'll do that. You know, even when you're living with somebody, a letter that comes in the mail to that person just is such an explosive treat. And I always want to say that, you know, I hear people say all the time, we all hear it, and you've got cameras and all kinds of instruments at your behest, you know, but people say, oh, I wish I had a magic wand. And here's where I like to come in and say, you have one. And here it is. It is the pen with which you write this letter. So,
you know, I agree 100%. And I'm a big fan of writing letters. You know, all of our film challenge judges, I write personal letters. We give them a gift. We, in general, you know, I'll just say this in closing. You know, when I worked on Boardwalk Empire, I got a handwritten letter from Martin Scorsese welcoming me to the set. And that was really one of the most touching things in my life.
I'm extra impressed with him now.
Yes. So love letters are what it's all about. And I can't thank you enough for having me on your show.
So if there's anything else you ever want to talk about, it's, you know, a new direction in your whole film challenge or in movie opportunities for the disabled or anything new, and you'd like to do this again, just give me a holler.
All right, that sounds great.
Okay,
thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.